Back here at HQ, greetings. Happy Tuesday. Hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand here on BlazeTV, radio and podcast. I'm back here with Todd and Aaron. Good to see both of you. How are you?
Excellent. How are you?
I already missed Texas, I got to be honest. I already missed Texas. I mean, Iowa's okay, I guess, but I really miss Texas.
Any good barbecue?
I didn't have any time for barbecue, man. Those people ran me ragged down there. I mean,
So you miss Texas without barbecue. Just think if you add barbecue.
Right. I did go to like some really nice sports bar that's by the Toyota Center, and I went to, I went to, where did I go Friday night? Kind of their version, their local version. It's called The Ranch there in Dallas, kind of a local version of a Ruth Chris or a Fleming's kind of a place.
Nice.
Went there Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, that ribeye was
Texas
absolutely,
steak,
absolutely fantastic. But nonetheless, I will muddle through the first world suffering of doing this show while no longer being in Texas. 888-900-3393 is the number. That's 888-900-3393. Steve at stevedeace.com is how you can email us. You can like us on Facebook as well. It's facebook.com/Steve Deace. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. And if you're looking for clips of this show that you can sample yourself and then share with others, go to youtube.com/Steve Deace. That's youtube.com/Steve Deace. The one thing I did enjoy about coming home is, I don't know if you guys saw, I tweeted about this, but Noah decided while I was gone, my son decided to pull a prank on his two sisters. And so he went into my Wikipedia page and edited it to make it look like I had ranked my children, my favorite children, and he was a clear number one. And I mean, the way that he worded it too, Noah's wit and familiar looks makes him a good match, a good father-son match or something like that. And then he showed it to his sisters and said, "Hey, can you believe this is on Dad's Wikipedia page?" And they lost it. Okay, they lost it. And then Mom ended up figuring out it was a prank, made Noah go in there and change it back. So she told me on the way back from the airport Saturday, I decided to confront Noah with it yesterday. And I said, "Hey, you want to tell me what happened while I was gone?" Just like that, you know? And he kind of froze and shot me a look. He's like, What? I said, "You know, do you want to tell me what happened while I was gone?" And he's like, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it." I said, "What are we talking about?" He said, "Hey, the Wikipedia thing." I said, "Well, first of all, not only are you not in trouble, but that was a masterful troll."
Well done, good and faithful servant.
Yes, and credit for original thinking. But just to see how quickly the look on his face instantly changed made it all worth it. I mean, I saw the blood drain from his face in real time.
50 points for Gryffindor.
Yes, but then suddenly it looked like he thought he could scale tall buildings in a single bound, right? So that was the big highlight.
I love how we're getting more tales of his deviousness the very year that he enrolled in Christian school. That's outstanding.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but thank you for thinking of it. Yes. Money well spent. Absolutely. All right, today's show, we are jam-packed. Shelley Luther, who became a national cause celeb by refusing to comply with the ridiculous lockdowns in her native Dallas. She's going to join us here at the bottom of the hour. Also, fake news or not coming up next hour, as well as Pop Culture Tuesday. We're going to show you a video from Barstool Sports. It is a 4-year-old video. It is prophecy. It has perfectly encapsulated the spirit of the age, this moment that is happening in our culture right now. What does America's cold civil war look like? This video nails it. We're going to show that to you coming up next hour of the show. But before we get to all of that, here is Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Church is Essential.
Today I'm identifying houses of worship churches, synagogue, and mosques as essential places that provide essential services. Some governors have deemed liquor stores and abortion clinics as essential, but have left out churches and other houses of worship. It's not right. So I'm correcting this injustice and calling houses of worship essential.
President Trump made that announcement late last week as a slew of states are still doing their best to make it hard for congregations to gather. President Trump spent Memorial Day weekend doing the typical presidential stuff, laying wreaths, playing golf, and doing the typical Trump stuff, like tweeting about MSNBC host Joe Scarborough reportedly murdering his former staffer while he was in the U.S. House of Representatives. Fortunately for President Trump, he's going up against this guy, presumably, in November.
I'm prepared to say that I have a record of over 40 years and that I'm going to beat Joe Biden. I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Learning Chinese today, today's phrase is, if you don't let me sniff your hair, you ain't a woman.
如果你不让我嗅你的头发，那你不是女人。
New York Times op-ed the day before Memorial Day. Why does the U.S. military celebrate white supremacy? Coronavirus updates. Researchers at Oxford University say the Wuhan coronavirus is disappearing so quickly, the chances of having a successful vaccine is only around 50%. In case you're wondering how the debate over mask wearing is going, the following video surfaced over the weekend from a grocery store in Staten Island, New York. For those of you listening, what we're watching is a mob of masked shoppers berating and driving out a woman who was not wearing a mask. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is facing some questions after her husband allegedly asked a docking company in northern Michigan to prepare the family's boat for Memorial Day weekend. Problem is, Whitmer just said days ago Michiganders are not to travel there or basically anywhere in the state for the holiday. Days after teasing mandatory mask wearing in his state, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam could be seen out and about in public without a mask, taking selfies. New York City has shuttered a $20 million makeshift field hospital designed for COVID-19 after having not seen a single patient. Washington state officials admitted recently they counted some gunshot victims as COVID-19 deaths. Dr. Anthony Fauci now says this.
I don't want people to think that any of us feel that staying locked down for a prolonged period of time is the way to go. We can't stay locked down for such a considerable period of time that you might do irreparable damage.
Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy, your thoughts?
What is it, Fauci? Pick a side, or at least say you don't know what the you're talking about. That's the problem. That's my whole point. Nobody knows what we're talking about. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, stay inside, don't stay inside. All right. Well, who knows? If nobody knows anything, then what the are we doing?
And finally, you may remember Mr. Florida Beach Grim Reaper.
I'm a huge proponent of public beaches, and I've been fighting for that for years. But I think that the danger of bringing all the people here to our area and spreading the virus, and I think it's going to prolong the recovery we have.
Well, now he's back on Twitter asking for donations so he can buy body bags to hand out to Florida beachgoers. He said, quote, beginning next Saturday, I will have a team handing out free body bags throughout the state of Florida beachgoers. Each body bag costs $10. We ordered a few hundred tonight. Please consider chipping in $10 to cover the cost of a body bag. For every $10 contribution, we will be able to order one more to hand out. And the panic porn never ends, and that's what happened while we were away.
If you're considering donating to the body bag cause for Florida beachgoers, I might suggest a ministry that I think is right up your alley that you should also consider propagating and donating to. Pastor's name is Creflo Dollar. See me after the program. Aaron's montage is, got to respect that level of grift. Stacey Abrams called and said, damn. Aaron's montage brought to you by Freedom Project Academy. Over the last few months, millions of Americans have been homeschooling their kids and discovering just how badly the government schools have failed them. Maybe it's time to take back your child's education, and Freedom Project Academy is here to help you do exactly that. From the comfort and convenience and safety of your home, your children can receive an accredited, classical online education built on Judeo-Christian values for students in K through 12. This is a complete interactive educational experience where students attend live classes with other students across the country. And more importantly, they teach students there how to think, not what to think. If you'd like to learn more, go to freedomforschool.com. That is freedomforschool.com. Request your free information packet today. Enrollment has just begun. And classes are filling up faster than normal because parents are concerned about safety options for the fall. Great opportunity to enhance your child's education while keeping them safe at the same time. Go to freedomforschool.com. Again, that is freedomforschool.com. Coming up in the overtime today, we are going to discuss an ad that the Trump campaign came out with over this weekend that I have never seen from a Republican. And wow. Okay. So we're going to discuss that coming up in the overtime today. If you're not yet an overtime subscriber, go to blazetv.com/Deace to become one and get a discounted subscription today. If you're already a Blaze TV subscriber, just be patient. It'll be posted for you later this afternoon. blazetv.com/Deace. Again, that is blazetv.com/Deace. Would you please make my day? One of y'all try doing that to me in a store without a mask. Please. Please. Nobody ever tries this stuff with me. Please try it with me. Please. Please. I long for you to attempt this. Just try it with me, please. None of the good stuff ever happens to me. Try it with me, please. I beg of you. Give it a shot. Let's see what happens.
I can't tell what Steve wants here, Todd.
It's subtle.
That's just another day that ends in Y. It's very hard to read the tea leaves.
I'm hard to read. I'm a hard person to read, indeed. A lot of what you're seeing in there, we're just coming off Memorial Day. And a lot of what you just saw in Aaron's montage, frankly and sadly, isn't really a country worth dying for. It's a country that is in a sprint to abandon its birthright. And I want to share something with you here this morning. What do we mean when people like me say that the lockdowns are going to end up killing more people than coronavirus was ever going to? What does that mean? How do we quantify that? I want to do that for you here this morning. Dr. Scott Atlas over at Stanford University has done the research and has itemized in specific detail how the lockdowns are killing us and will go down as the absolute worst management decision in all of American history. Here's some data. We've lost 5% of our gross domestic product, which amounts to $1.1 trillion per month. Per month. To put that number in perspective, I went and looked it up. There are only 16 nations on Earth with an annual GDP, over $1 trillion or more. Only 16 million. Which means in the last few months, we have lost more wealth than the total GDP of just a few of the following countries. Turkey, member of NATO, Saudi Arabia, with all of that oil, Switzerland, with all of that banking, Sweden, Argentina, and Iran, among dozens and dozens of others. Just pause for a moment and contemplate that. We have voluntarily surrendered more of our wealth in the last couple of months than most of the other prominent nations of this planet will accumulate in a year. Think about that. And then think about this. Lost wealth of this magnitude, combined with approaching now 40 million unemployed, increases a nation's mortality as much as 50%. To quantify that number for you, that works out to about 65,000 lives lost for every month of the lockdown. Wow. The good news continues. Then there's the lives lost due to the missed health care. Stroke evaluations are down 40%. Strokes didn't just go away, folks. They're just not being treated. Half of America's 650,000 cancer patients aren't getting treatments during these lockdowns. Upwards of 3/4 of new cancer screenings are not happening. Boy, those people are in for a surprise in a few months when they finally get screened and find out that they're no longer treatable, no longer operable, or maybe could have avoided a rigorous chemotherapy regimen and now they can't. Living donor transplants are down 85% compared to last year. Let me repeat that. Living donor transplants are down 85% at this time compared to last year. In total, America has collectively lost more than 500,000 years of life from missed treatment delays, missed stroke diagnoses, missed cancer diagnoses, missed child vaccinations. That's more lost years of life than Americans outside of our nursing homes will suffer from COVID-19, and it's not even close. It's not even close. 2/3 of all of our COVID-19 deaths have occurred in the handful of states that repopulated their nursing homes with the COVID-19 infected. I'll have a video about that tomorrow. And why every one of those people have murdered more Americans than the Viet Cong, Islamic Jihad, and all ought to be in prison. If you have never been in a nursing home and currently are not, the impact that these lockdowns will have on you compared to this virus and your health, by an order of numerous magnitude, it's not even close. Americans, therefore, must defy these lockdowns to end them all over the country. Several of you have sent me your photos and videos of how you did so over the weekend. Keep it up. Because by defying them, you're not just reclaiming your country. The data shows you're literally saving lives by helping to end them. Finally, I want to show you this. This data, and if you look at New York, that's clearly a lie. But let's look at the other 49 states. Deaths occurring in nursing homes and assisted living facilities through May 22nd, the Friday before Memorial Day. The percentage of deaths in these states that occurred in a nursing home or an assisted living facility, look at all of those numbers. Here's what it means. Aside from America's nursing homes, coronavirus was just a very bad flu season. That's all that it was. We never had to do these lockdowns. They're the worst management decision of all time. And we shouldn't obey them. We shouldn't obey them one iota anymore. It's now not even about your liberty and your freedom or even your economic well-being. It's literally a matter of life and death. We must defy these lockdowns now to save lives. Gentlemen, your thoughts after walking through some of that data.
You know, yesterday, Memorial Day, often on Memorial Day or July 4th, if I have some time, some beach reading, something like that, I'll pick out a book that I haven't perused in a long time. And I hadn't dabbled in the Federalist Papers in a while. Pulled those out yesterday. That was a mistake. There's a reason why the lockdowns were obsessed over, grabbed onto, idolized. It's because we aren't that people anymore that created this great country. You just see it in how we think about things. They're dead. They're gone. If we get our country back, it is because we will have fought a new American Revolution. We simply aren't the people who are able to make first things anymore. It was fascinating along the lines of what Steve is talking about this weekend. I saw a great effort to show that Sweden really was a disaster. Not in any way breaking down the data. Sweden had a problem, just like all the states on there. Sweden absolutely had a elder care problem. It's lockdown, non-lockdown, that happened. But when Steve and I were talking, and Aaron and I were talking before, we even, back in early March, off air, we were talking about old people, heroic measures to save them. Everybody failed along those lines. But it's fascinating, in the need to kill Sweden here, just today in real time. What is his name? Justin Hart, I think, putting out all of the experts in Europe who did lockdown are now publicly saying lockdowns were a mistake. So nice try this weekend on the need to try to.
This is literally the only country on earth whose leadership, beginning with the president himself, frankly, whose leadership will not admit this. Yeah. We're literally the only country on earth that won't do this.
So you tried. It's not even Sweden. It's all of Europe now. You're going to have to now try to retcon all of Europe. So you did your darn best. This is it's not just an invincible ignorance, but it's a malevolent invincible ignorance. So Oz goes up to 11. The degree to which the spirit of the age has taken over all things here in 2020, it needs to be reconciled, because Steve is absolutely right when he talks about the people that may need to go to prison for this. There's no simply shrugging our shoulders and doing a my bad on all this. We are in the midst of a civil war. This was a front in that war, and people are dying because of it.
Examples need to be made out of some people. An apology simply, while appreciated, not enough. This requires a different level of accountability. Some examples need to be made, because there's going to be another one of these, and there's going to be more fake models and more fake data, because the game plan that was followed here is exactly the same scam we've had with global warming and climate change and rising oceans for the last 30 years. It's just this time the models were so bad that even a lot of scientists who believe in all those things were calling BS on it all along. But don't think they will be deterred by this. Just as putting nobody in prison for Russian collusion led to Kavanaugh, and just as putting nobody in prison for Kavanaugh led to Ukrainian collusion, and on and on and on and on it goes. If you don't hold people accountable, it will just continue on and on and on. All right? This is not the time to spare the rod and spoil the child. This is a time to look at these children and say, this time it's not going to hurt me as much as it's going to hurt you, because you've got it coming. This is a time for some trips behind the woodshed. That's what this is a time for.
Yeah, this Nuremberg trial stuff. Honestly, a full-on accounting of the appalling abuse of reason in science in the name of we will ultimately find out sooner or later. I fear it's going to be much later. Just the appalling grift, as Steve often says, that was behind a lot of this nonsense.
Yeah, and on the topic of Sweden as well, I've seen people making the arguments, well, they're facing an economic downturn anyway. Yeah, that's a red herring. That was baked into the cake almost everywhere across the planet by the end of March, just because of the reaction to it. And so the way our economies are interconnected now,
right.
It was never about whether or not an economic downturn could be avoided. It was about how to make this one and delve the pain and delve the sharpness and acuity of this one as fast as possible by reopening the economy. So that's another red herring argument I saw about Sweden as well in recent days. I will say this, though. I don't know about y'all. I think the best thing that I can say about these lockdowns and about this entire episode over the last 2 to 3 months is that at least I got my $1,200 check, which is going to be the only Social Security me and my generation and most of the people listening to this will ever see. So maybe I should create a shirt that says, I survived COVID-19 lockdowns and all I got was this lousy check. So there's that as well. And it sounds like we're going to be getting some more checks as well. Just checks on checks on checks on checks. This entire episode, I keep saying this. And you want to get really depressed right now? Yeah. Let's just throw another shrimp on the Barbie. I made this prediction probably probably a month and a half ago on the Deace group. Heck, it might have been on the overtime. That I believed what would really send us out of this lockdown fanaticism faster than anything, faster than any cheerleading from President Trump, faster than any great protests in any of these many states where there have been protests, and kudos to them who have gotten out there and protested. Faster than anything was the American addiction to large S. And I think that's actually going to become true just a lot later than I predicted it. What you're going to see, because of the speed that things are opening up, by the end of this year, we should still be saying to ourselves what you just said. Where are the examples? Where are the prison doors slamming on the people who are responsible for 81% of deaths in Minnesota coming from long-term care facilities, 61 in Washington, 59 in Oregon, 63 in North Carolina, 62, and it goes on and on and on. In October, we should all be asking ourselves still, if there has been no justice for the people responsible for those decisions, we should still be asking ourselves, why aren't the prison doors slamming on these people? Here's the depressing thing.
We've got prison cells empty now.
Yeah, we've got prisons. Here's the depressing thing that I'm getting to. That large S, once we start getting that going again, we're going to be thinking, oh yeah, wasn't the Vegas shooting earlier this year? Oh yeah, that was this year. What's on TV tonight? Because the same impulse that it gets addicted to fear is actually, I think, the same impulse that is addicted to the large S. If that makes sense. I think the overwhelming majority of Americans are just unmoored or are just like a weather vane. So I think by the end of the year, a lot of people are going to be thinking, that was earlier this year. That should be the most one of the most alarming things, alarming takeaways of this entire ordeal. That we as a people, to Todd's point, we as a people just are not capable, so it seems, of self-government. There are still enough that enough people who are willing to try to find the truth that we have been able to dig ourselves out to some degree and will continue to do so. But it would have happened a lot sooner if we were the people that Todd just described in the founding of our country.
I mean, I was watching a video yesterday of a barber on the Capitol steps in my old home state of Michigan getting her Miranda rights read to her by a cop for giving somebody a haircut. If you're that cop, man, you're a douchebag, and shame on you. You're not worthy of that badge. Take it off your chest. You're a bitch. You're a punk. You're a bitch for the state. That's what you are. Maybe change into a brown shirt instead. Maybe change from to protect and to serve and to just following orders. You're not worthy of that calling. Because it's going to be people like you. Whatever it is the next time. See, these governors can't carry out these edicts on their own. They need people like you. People like you collecting a paycheck while 40 million Americans are unemployed to go down and read Miranda rights for a woman cutting a guy's hair. Go intercourse yourself with that. Get the hell out of my country. That ain't America. More in a moment. So unless you're a total wuss and plan on self-isolating forever, you're going to need to be around other people again. And one of the best ways to avoid getting sick is with a healthier immune system. all year round, which is why you ought to be taking Field of Greens from Brickhouse Nutrition, because one scoop of Field of Greens is a full serving of real USDA certified organic fruits and vegetables, which boosts energy and supports a healthy immune system. If you're out of shape and don't eat healthy, your risk is higher. It's as simple as that. Plus, a diet full of rich fruits and vegetables can reduce your risk of heart disease, hypertension, stroke, even cancer. And Field of Greens is also loaded with prebiotics and probiotics. That's important because the largest immune system in the whole body is in the gut. So just one scoop in any kind of water-based drink and stir it, and you are good to go. And right now you can save 15% off your first order with the offer code STEVE at BrickhouseSteve.com. 15% off of your first order with the offer code STEVE at BrickhouseSteve.com. And if you decide to subscribe and have this shipped to you anywhere in the country every single month, you're going to save 10% every month for doing that too. BrickhouseSteve.com, promo code STEVE. That's BrickhouseSteve.com, promo code Steve. Well, she was a bit of a spark that inspired others to follow suit around the country. She joins us now here on BlazeTV radio and podcast. Shelley Luther is our guest. Shelley, my name is Steve Deace. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. How are you?
Thanks. I'm great, Steve. How are you?
I'm a little better. I could be a little better, but I could be a lot worse. You know how it is. All right. So, Shelley, tell us, before we get into your story, who are you? I'm always fascinated. I think because a lot of people in our audience are like, I couldn't do that. Well, I didn't go to this school, or I don't have this platform. You know, what do I do? I get emails from people all the time. What can I do? Right? Well, who's Shelley? What led you down the road to ending up on the Steve Deace Show here today? What's your background?
Well, I was, my dad's a master gunny sergeant, or was a master gunny sergeant in the Marines. He retired. He was in there 26 years. And I went to college on a softball scholarship. And then I ended up getting a teaching certification in Texas. And I taught for over 10 years. And then I got out of teaching, just wanted to try something different. So I went to makeup school and kind of opened up my own salon, redid it myself from the ground up. And then I ended up in court being asked to, I don't know what.
So in other words, take away the athletic exploits where you're good enough to play collegiate sports. That one, less than 1% of Americans obtain that level of academic or athletic prowess. The rest of your story, though, what's that?
Don't say what are. I was.
Okay.
I'm a lot older.
But the rest of your story, Dad was in the military. I was a teacher. Decided to become an entrepreneur. That's really not. That's a pretty typical American story, right? The rest of your story, which means what you did, others could do and follow suit. And I think you have inspired others to do similar, particularly in my old home state of Michigan, where this is going on right now as well. So you decided to reopen your business down in Dallas, despite the lockdown order. Tell us why.
There were several reasons why, but obviously the biggest reason were financial. Not just me, my hairstylists were really in a bind, and especially the ones that were just kind of starting out, that are fresh out of school. They don't have a lot of savings, kind of living day by day on what they made that day. And when you're going that long without making any money, obviously it starts to put you in a bind. One of the other reasons was I had some of the hairstylists saying that they needed to go underground and go to people's houses in order to, make ends meet. And that kind of was the final decision for me. I just woke up one morning and said, I've got to open the salon. I wanted it to be obviously a way more sanitary place than going to people's houses. And I didn't want to be part of the problem of spreading the virus. I wanted to be a solution.
I think that's one of the ironic things here is that creating a black market, the idea that you're going to get people just for indefinite periods of time to give up their skills, their purpose in life, not to mention meeting their most basic needs, just for an indefinite period of time without creating a black market. It's like no one ever read about prohibition. And that's a far worse environment than, at least if we know where people are going and doing these activities, we can assume there's some level of oversight, some level of sanitization that's going on and things of that nature. I think that's a point that's been lost in a lot of this. But did you count Did you count the cost? Did you think you were going to become a national story when you did this?
Absolutely not. This is all pretty overwhelming to me. And honestly, this is how out of it I am, I guess. I opened my salon not even knowing that I would be probably one of the first or the first, out loud saying I'm just going to open my business. All I was thinking about were my stylists at the time and what I could do to help them. The government kept pushing back the date that we would open, and none of the stimulus money. Unemployment in Texas was horrible, is horrible still, as far as trying to get in touch with them. Small business loans weren't replying back at the time. And so I really had no choice. And when all of this started to happen and the news cameras started to come, that's when I started to realize, wow, this is a little bit bigger than what I thought it was.
Did you think there was a chance that, hey, it's Texas, and yeah, we're being cautious, but in the end, man, it's friggin' Texas. I mean, I'm not going to get arrested in the end for, nobody's going to actually try to enforce this stuff. And a lot of it is they're just asking us to do this to help them flatten the curve in our hospitals. And at some point, we just have to take it upon ourselves. There's no way that they're going to treat me like they would, say, in California. Did you think that at all?
No, not really at the beginning. I'm like, how could they fault us for, wanting to feed our family? We have no other choice. But the other factor in this is, other big box stores are open, the pet grooming stores open. And if they felt that those were safe enough to go into, why couldn't a completely sanitized salon be open?
That's a question we've asked a lot on this show, is how come I cannot catch coronavirus at Costco, but I can going to my barber? Do you know the answer to any of those kinds of questions? Were you able to get anybody to answer them for you?
No, because that's discrimination, actually. So no.
When the police came, tell us what happened.
The police TDLR, which is our Texas licensing regulation for businesses, and they called me the night before I opened, because obviously I made it known that I was going to open. I didn't want to hide from it and feel guilty about it. So they called and said, if you open tomorrow, police are going to come. And I'm like, well, I'm opening tomorrow because we don't have a choice. So the police came in the morning early, like right after I opened, and they gave me a citation, basically just for being open against the ordinance. But honestly, the police were almost embarrassed that they had to give me that citation. They were not wanting to give me that.
I was going to ask that because ultimately a governor, or I think people around the country, I had to learn this, Dallas County, where this went down, has a unique local governing system where like a judge is like a super mayor, kind of a potentate down there, right? It's a weird local governing system you have there.
Weird is a nice word, Steve, actually. Like, weird is the nicest word I can think of right now. It's tyrannic and really corrupt, actually. So weird, I guess, is nice to say.
But he can have all the authoritarian meanderings and imaginings that he would like. It's going to require somebody with a badge to carry that out, right? He's not coming down there to give you a citation. Someone else lower down the food chain's got to decide that I got to feed my family, and the way I'm going to do it is ticketing poor salon owners like you, right?
Right, as they're releasing others from, jail, and they made a law, I think in Dallas or in Texas, I'm not sure, that even shoplifters, as long as it's under $700, they're not even going to get a ticket or a fine.
So you go before
steal.
You go, really, it is a license to steal. Exactly. You go before the judge. He says, hey, you recant. Like, this is some kind of religious tribunal. You recant your statements against the church. All right. And if you do that, you can walk scot-free. You're like, I'm not doing that. What was their reaction when you didn't do that?
I think the judge was pretty surprised. He wasn't really paying attention to me when I was speaking. When he asked me, if I had anything to say, he was shuffling papers, as everyone saw. But when I said, I'm not going to apologize for something that I believe is right. He definitely looked shocked.
Eventually, the governor intervenes. The state attorney general, Ken Paxton, intervenes. A few of us, we let those officials know that they had about 10 minutes to do something about this. And it took them about 20, still too long, but they eventually did step in. You were released. The Supreme Court stepped in your case as well. Where's it at right now?
Well, my case right now is actually still in the Texas Supreme Court. They have the authority to make me serve the other 5 days. So right now they're just hashing out both sides of it, and I'm only out until they decide. What about the fact that Governor Abbott has come forth and said, hey, nobody signed a decree. No one can be jailed for violating my emergency order. How does that factor into your case at all? Well, I actually went to jail for contempt of court for not apologizing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it's not really the ordinance.
What are you doing now? What's life been like for you the last couple of weeks?
Well, we started a charitable organization because obviously everyone knows about all the money when I was in jail, all the money that ended up in a GoFundMe account, which is seriously overwhelming to me still. So I wanted to do something good with the money. So I started couragetostand.com. And basically any small business owner or anyone that feels like they've been put in a situation, by the government, I want to be able to lend them not only my voice, but maybe some, money as well to help pay for their fines if they want to stand up or anything like that. Because I feel like across the country, this is still happening. And especially in these Democratic states, it's crazy what these governors feel like they're allowed to do.
I understand you visited my old home state of Michigan recently when the salon owners decided to protest against Governor Whitmer. Tell us about that experience.
We went and met Carl Mankey, and he is the sweetest man. And I mean, has really nothing to lose at 77 years old.
He's the Owasso barber that has said, I'm not shutting down anymore, by the way, for our audience. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. Oh, yeah. And so we just met and we held a pretty good press conference out there and kind of voicing our thoughts and what we thought other Michiganders should do out there to help themselves. But what was crazy is our rally was set up for 3 p.m., which it was public. And I heard that Gretchen Whitmer was supposed to do her, her press release at like 2:30, and she moved it up to 1:30 and opened up a tiny piece of the northern part of Michigan, which I guess she didn't want to do that after our rally to make it look like we were part of that. But I really feel like we were part of her giving something.
I was just down in your county last week. Our Blaze corporate offices, main studios are down there. I was down there visiting. Went to a restaurant you probably are familiar with down there, the Ranch. There in that area. You familiar with that steakhouse there? Mm-hmm, and you'd have never known, other than the fact our server was wearing gloves, you would have never known that just a couple of weeks ago you were human contraband for daring to open a salon. I mean, just going around town, going out to eat, going out to sports bars. I mean, there were fewer people there. But other than there being fewer people there were no signs that this was going on in your community just a couple of weeks ago. Do you think maybe it just needed somebody like you to kind of be the first one to say, enough of this?
I mean, a lot of people say that, and I don't know if that's true, but I know that a lot of people opened their businesses because of what I did, because they contacted me saying, you gave me the courage to open my business, especially in Texas, because Governor Abbott, made it retroactive that you cannot be jailed. So I think that's what a lot of the business owners were scared of, is being jailed. But if it's, minor things, tickets or citations or whatever, we'll just pay them. It's worth it.
Tell us again about the charity that you started with the money that people poured in to support you one more time before we let you go, Shelley.
It's couragetostand.com. And a couple of the things that we did, we went to Laredo and actually helped those two ladies that were arrested. They were pulled out of their beds in the middle of the night with their kids screaming, or one of the girl with their kids screaming, ridiculous, for she was doing nails in her house. We also gave away over $18,000 to a barbershop in South Dallas. We gave a scholarship to a guy that was actually homeless, living in his car. And so now he could become his own entrepreneur and start his own business and not have a boss. And so those are the things that we want to do and help people that are kind of in a situation. And I feel for them, honestly, I wouldn't want anybody to be in the situation I was in before all this happened.
God bless you, Shelley. What you did, every great reform movement in this country's history, every great one, has begun with somebody standing up and saying one simple word: no. Too often, when they lean on us, they push on us, our answer is always yes. After a bunch of hemming and hawing, you actually had the courage to stand, to borrow a phrase, and stand up there and say no. And on behalf of our show and our viewers and listeners all over the country, thank you for what you did.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You bet. God bless. Take care. Bye. Your thoughts on that conversation, man?
Can she still hear us?
She just hung up.
Okay. Well, I want to speak directly at Shelley. I know from personal experience, this is regarding what Steve is talking about. It's not just one time of saying no. It's impressive that she did it to open up her business. But even more impressive, when we've talked about it on the show before, back in the day when I got arrested as a reporter, the leverage they keep turning the screws on you over and over again. When she was in that courtroom, that's the really impressive one. When you're standing there with the judge, just pushing down on you, you're in that environment now. Jail is a real possibility. It happened. It was for me as well. I ultimately didn't have to, but in that moment to say no. God bless you, Shelley, for that. And how dare any of you to sit, if you're inspired by her message, when your moment comes, to not do the same. It's not about being inspired. It's about what Steve says. It's about being a nation of will. What are you prepared to do? You must take this country back. You must, if she has any meaning to you.
We're going to come back, play our weekly game of fake news or not, plus a Pop Culture Tuesday on a Barstool Sports viral video that 4 years later is American prophecy. We'll discuss that and more with Hour 2 here next. Stay tuned. And we're back with Hour 2 live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace. Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre are here with me as well. If you'd like to join us, steve@stevedeace.com is how you can email the program. That's DEACE. You can like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. That's DEACE. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. Also, don't forget, if you like the show and you haven't done so yet, heck, even if you already have, do it again. Let's keep those 5-star reviews coming wherever you choose to podcast from, because the more of those we get, the more likely we are to get to continue to do this show, because they help the show grow. The algorithms like them. I don't know. I'm just telling you what I'm told to tell you. All right. So keep those 5-star reviews coming. If for no other reason, Aaron, as you know, has low self-esteem and he needs all the encouragement that he can get. All right.
That was way too accurate, Steve. Sorry.
Thank you to the thousands of you that have left us one of those 5-star reviews already. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, Pop Culture Tuesday on a 4-year-old video that is American prophecy. It's exactly where we're at as a people right now. We'll discuss that with Pop Culture Tuesday. But let's get to Fake News or Not, brought to you by Home Title Lock. When your life is in chaos, your home is your safe haven, your most important asset. But do you truly own it? Don't be so sure. Imagine getting evicted for non-payment of a loan on your home that you never took out. This happened to Deborah, and it's happening everywhere. It's called home title theft, and the FBI calls it one of the fastest growing crime waves in the country, which is why I urge you to get Home Title Lock, because your home's legal title is kept online, and thieves know this, so they'll forge your signature on your home's title, and that's it. They legally own your home, and they'll take loans out on it. Your bank doesn't cover you when this happens. Neither does your insurance. The only way I know of to avoid the nightmare of a possible eviction from your own home is with Home Title Lock. So go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. At HomeTitleLock.com, use the promo code Steve while you're there, and you'll get 30 free days of protection to help you get through this crisis as well. 30 free days of protection when you go to HomeTitleLock.com, promo code Steve at HomeTitleLock.com. Let's get to it. Fake news or not, as you know, the typical ground rules are we're only fact-checking the people and platforms that claim to be representing what is left of America. We're not sitting around here most of the time fact-checking the propaganda from the left America. And we begin with one of my personal favorites, my man, Anthony Fauci.
Depending upon the dynamics of the infection in the particular state, city, region, county that you're in, we certainly want to, in a cautious way, reopening. We can't stay locked down for such a considerable period of time that you might do irreparable damage and have unintended consequences, including consequences for health. And it's for that reason why the guidelines are being put forth so that the states and the cities can start to re-enter and reopen.
I have a sudden, I don't know, maybe it's a coincidence, interest to wonder, what is the typical sentencing for assault and battery? I wonder if does it vary state by state? Anyway, let's get back on topic. Fake news or not, Todd, what do you think?
You know, you and I were talking on a different matter yesterday. And it's about somebody who promises to never lie to you. And in the most absurd sense, it can be true because everything in totality is a lie. That's pretty much where we are with this guy. It's like, what am I supposed to do with that? After everything that he's been said, it is.
I know what I'd like to do. It's not permissible.
It's frowned upon in most
it is
societies.
Yeah, yes, except like Singapore. But I know what I would like to do. Yeah.
There's a different game that needs to be played regarding that man and when he speaks. It's both and, it's either or, he is the Kobayashi Maru of fake news or not.
No, I think he's parcel tongue. I mean, I didn't know that he has made it accessible now, right? Aaron, we can all speak snake now,
yes.
Right?
Yeah. I have like 5 things that I want to say right now, and I'm trying to condense them all down into one coherent bit. I'll start with this. Do you find it interesting that he doesn't do like any cable news appearances for like a week and a half, 2 weeks? This was like his first major appearance after he went to the Senate or appeared in the Senate committee and said, "Oh, we can't open up schools," and then subsequently got called out by President Trump. First major appearance, at least that I know of. After that, says, "Yeah, well, we got to open up, guys. We got to open up." I think it's pretty obvious. And Redfield was out there last week saying after those rumors started circulating that a target was on his back, he started saying, "Oh, you know what? States are doing great. We got to start opening up." Just funny. I'm sure it's quinkedinkle timing that those things happened. Of course, this is fake news. He is I'm trying to think of a perfect analogy. He is the herald/oracle of coronavirus scientism.
He's the Larry Flint of coronavirus panic porn.
Larry Flint. Yeah, I'm thinking more, I don't know. He just comes down from the mountaintop. He says a few mysterious, ambiguous, he's the Nostradamus. There we go. He's the Nostradamus of coronavirus scientism, where you make all of these very vague yet robust predictions, and people can interpret them whichever way they want. Play all sides of the issue. He is the Nostradamus in not a good way of coronavirus scientism. That's all, of course, fake news. I think I've said more than what needs to be said about this guy. Just this guy, man.
This freaking guy, right? He can't
be weighed and measured by fake news or not. I just don't think he can.
I think you might be onto something. This is Galactus, destroyer of worlds. This is the Thanos snap of fake news or not, right? I mean, you got your run-of-the-mill supervillains, and then there's this. How do you quantify what this guy is?
There's that scene in is it Stripes No, it's not volunteers. It's John Candy. When he's teaching the I think the foreign service workers that are Asian how to play poker, and he's totally like, oh well, if we were in America, 3 of a kind beats a pair, but since we're here, it's the other way around. And they're like, oh, and it's that absurd. You can't believe that he goes on, all the cameras are on him, and he keeps saying the exact opposite as an expert of what he said a couple weeks ago.
He has literally given, it reminds me of what used to be said about Mitt Romney. He feels very strongly about every side or all side of every issue. This guy has given every conceivable side on this, from literally nothing to see here to hide your kids, hide your wives because we're coronavirus and everybody up in here. See, and at some point he's going to be able to say, I told you that, because he's taken every position. So he's going to be able to say he was right.
And this is what I meant earlier about being depressed when I read the Federalist Papers. Like, if we were the people that we should be, he would be on trial for something by now.
I completely agree. Yeah.
But it's not even close to that. And it never will be,
He'd have been tarred and feathered or sent to Elba in another era. I agree with you. All right. Let's talk about Biden's apology next.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Here to discuss, we've got Fox News contributor and Fox Nation host Lawrence Jones. What do you make of Joe Biden's comments and his attempt to walk it back?
Yeah, I don't think it was a proper apology, and I'm sorry. You should apologize to Black America, not just leaders within the community. But it wasn't even the comments that annoyed me the most. It's the fact that he came to the interview ill-prepared. Remember, he's been running away from Charlemagne and the Breakfast Club for a while. A lot of politicians have rightfully been running away from the Breakfast Club because they don't have any agenda for Black America. He came into the interview very condescending, tried to educate Charlemagne on the crime bill. Most people in Black America know what happened with the crime bill. He did not accept responsibility for the crime bill.
All right, Aaron, you get to go first this time. What do you think?
So I think that's not fake news. I got to give this disclaimer every time we talk about Joe Biden's mental capacity. We got to give this disclaimer. We're not making fun, and we're not. It is humorous in a very macabre way when these gaffes, these things that he says that just happen when you're Joe Biden. It is humorous in a macabre way, just because the immensity of the number, just the number of these things, just you can't help but laugh. But if you're any person in the political sphere who's spent their entire career in a party that only sees factions and voting blocks and groups of people and not individual liberty, and then you understand that the game here is to pit these factions against one another, but you also understand that you can't actually say that out loud, and then you start to lose your mental faculty. You start saying things like this. Well, of course we got to get the gays. I mean, he could have said that again about, of course, the women. Of course the women got to. If you got to choose between me and Trump, you're not a woman. If you got to choose between me and Trump, you're not a gay. He could have said that about any number of people groups. It just so happens that he said that about the number one voting bloc of the Democratic Party. So of course that's not fake news. That's just a gaffe. When a politician opens his mouth and unvarnished truth comes out, that's how they see their voters. It is inherently condescending.
Todd, what do you think?
It's fake news to this extent, and notwithstanding the specific accusations of Lawrence as a black man, but it's fake news. It's not, and I'm echoing a bit of what Aaron said, but it's not really. This isn't about race per se, or even Joe Biden losing his fastball. Joe Biden would have said something like this 8 years ago. Joe Biden says stuff like this all the time.
Put y'all back in chains.
Oh yeah, this is progressivism is cancer. It's not. We keep getting in the funnel and making it about something that unique, a one-off, explain it away. Now, this is just the latest branding of a ideology that is fundamentally insane. So you're just going to get insane track after insane track after insane track. This is the Back in Black of progressive. It's just one more track on a
no pun intended, of course.
Yeah.
Well said, both of you. Let's. By the way, I like Lawrence, but I still happen to think the 1994 crime bill is one of the finest pieces of truly bipartisan legislation that's occurred in my entire lifetime.
Yeah, that's my point. It's not about that legislation even. So that's a distraction from just this overall ideology. It's just stupid.
Is Donald Trump the best black president?
They take African American voters for granted. But Sandra, President Donald Trump has done more for the African American community than any president in recent history. Look at what has transpired with the economy. Lower unemployment, higher wages prior to COVID. And these are things that the African American community has taken note of. Individual freedoms, focus on choice in education. President Donald Trump has a good record with the African American community, and you're going to see the benefits of that in November.
He could potentially get 11% of the. I'm sorry, that I didn't mean to add that editorial comment. Todd, you get to go first this time. What do you think? Fake news or not?
What exactly is the question that I'm saying fake news about? Just what she said, and there's no.
That's up to you. You may interpret it through any filter that you deem worthy.
That's going to be fake news if it's important that what you said about a vote. If the black vote isn't significantly improved in Donald Trump's direction in 2020, that will be fake news. That's the measure of it.
Give me a number. What's typically, I think there's only been a handful of Republicans, I think only a couple since the 1964 Civil Rights Act that have even gotten more than 11 or 12% in a national election.
What was the number for Trump the first go around?
It was like a point higher than Romney. I want to say it was like 11%, I think is what he got, something like that. Or maybe it was more 9.5, somewhere between 9 and 11, I think.
Well, it needs to be 20% or higher for 20, that.
Okay.
Well, I'm not saying what I think is going to happen, but for that to be true, it's not about it's patronizing to tell. Listen, Black America, if that's true in your eyes, it doesn't matter what I say or Steve says or the senator says. It's about what you say. And especially what you say relative to who the president was before Donald Trump. It doesn't really matter what we think. It's your lives. It's your vote. Show us.
Aaron.
I mean, in terms of pre-COVID employment numbers and things of that nature, you could make that argument, but I have no way. I'm not trying to virtue signal here. I don't really know how to determine whether or not that's fake news or not because I'm not black and I live in a predominantly white suburb in the middle of the Midwest. So I don't know if I can actually give an informed opinion. But if you look at let's just say on unemployment alone, if the numbers that we've gotten pre-COVID were correct, then in terms of jobs, you can make that case. You can make the case that Marsha Blackburn is making. So if that's the standard here, then that's not fake news.
Let's get to this next clip. Can you lead from the golf course?
Democrats, Joe Biden's campaign has already pulled that video of the president playing golf and did a campaign ad saying, how dare he play golf when so many people have this virus? He should be focusing on that. And the president said, look, I haven't played golf since the beginning of March, and we're trying to open up our country, and I'm trying to send a message that we can do this safely. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of how he's done it all along. He's faced criticism for not wearing a mask. He says, I'm the most tested, protected man in the country. I want to project as strong of an image as possible. People are going out in their lives, going fishing, going golfing, all the things we should have been doing pretty much the entire time because you can do it responsibly. But leading the way is important, and certainly the president trying to do that.
Just as a quick aside before I get your reaction to the clip, and Aaron, you'll go first this time. I don't know if you guys think this, but the whole question about why doesn't Trump wear a mask? He needs to wear a mask. Demanding that Trump wear a mask. Aaron, you might be too young for this. I don't know. But doesn't it strike you as back in 2004, when George W. Bush was running for re-election. Why doesn't he apologize? Mistakes remain in Iraq. Why doesn't he apologize? Apologize. Because that was, to me, it was a trap. If he apologizes, then the whole thing, well, then you admit you screwed up, you're big, and you shouldn't be reelected, right? And to get him to wear a mask, to berate him into doing it, and the symbolism of what that means, it's him acknowledging that ultimately it's really not safe to return to normal, and it pits him in direct conflict with his base. It just, the whole Trump and mask thing strikes me as, why won't Bush apologize from 2004? We're just running it back.
Well, it's just a riff on the conversation I think we had early last week about what we would do regarding masks. And so, I'm not opposed to masks per se, but if it's part of some sort of manipulation, hell no.
Yeah. Okay. Aaron, your thoughts on this clip? Trump is helping to project that it's time to reopen and safe to reopen by going golfing this weekend.
You know what I actually think? And I want to, this is really, really complicated. So I want to try to use all of the skills and talents and abilities that Jesus gave me in communication to communicate this as effectively as I possibly can. So please, give me grace. I don't know if I'm going to be able to communicate this effectively, but please try to follow along. Here's my theory about what Trump was doing this weekend. You ready for this? He was playing golf.
There was no four-dimensional chess. He was just playing golf.
Yeah, he was just playing.
That's your view. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he was just teeing up and playing golf.
So you think basically Fox and Friends came up with a better spin on Trump playing golf than he was able to on his own? Is that kind of what you think?
Yeah, I mean, do you think that if this was happening, I don't know, 5 years ago, the Chiron would have been saying, Trump leads from the golf course? No, it would have been saying Barack Obama plays golf. Well, the death toll from coronavirus.
I don't know.
I hate that.
I
hate
know
the whole golf thing.
Yeah, I don't know what my position is permitted to be on presidents with golf. I don't know if I'm supposed to be opposed to it or not. I don't know.
Playing golf.
Do we have an internal Blaze memo on what our position is on presidents and golf? Do we know? I don't know.
Well, it's two legs bad,
four legs good, two legs bad.
On Fox, I think it is, because this was stupid when Barack Obama was president and they were ripping on him for golfing. Hey, he golfs more than George W. Bush. And then it was back then when George W. Bush was president. Oh, he golfs too much. The whole Democrat or Republican, you can spend your entire presidency on the golf course, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
If you're a good president, you can, golf is it's like The Great Lebowski. When they made that movie, they had an idea for the movie, and then they decided we need a sport that you can do where you can drink and smoke and have a lot of conversation. Bowling. Yeah. You can actually golf and be president at the same time in many respects. I don't care. Just don't suck at. That's the bigger problem. And quite frankly, Obama in many ways sucked, golfing or not golfing, and President Trump in many ways sucked, golfing or not golfing.
What if he had said up front, hey, I haven't golfed for the last couple of months. Hospitalizations are way down. We're kicking this thing's ass. And we got to send a signal. Like, I went down to Dallas. Send a signal.
Steve, he laid a wreath at Arlington earlier that day.
Exactly. But what if he had said that and said, you know what? And,
doesn't matter.
And after this, I'm going golfing to show it's time to get back to being America.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And it also would not have mattered. And here, everybody, conservative, Republican, didn't matter regarding Barack Obama. You just wanted that low-hanging fruit.
All right. One last clip, a name you know. This is from Raymond Arroyo, talking about what Americans will trade for their liberty.
In 1775, when George Washington and our founding fathers were struggling for independence in Boston, there was a smallpox outbreak. People forget about this. He had his army was threatened. All of Boston was infected with this horrible contagion. Here's what he did. He quarantined the soldiers and the Boston locals who were infected, and they moved forward with the siege of Boston. So he was fighting two enemies. And it reminded me of John Adams, whom himself battled smallpox. He wrote this in 1765. Liberty must at all hazards be supported. We have a right to it derived from our Maker. And if we had not, our fathers have earned it and bought it for us at the expense of their ease, their estates, their leisure, and their blood. Today, we're willing to trade that liberty, Steve, I worry, for a quickie pizza and a Netflix subscription. Our liberty is more valuable than that.
Todd, you take this one first this time.
It's Steve Hilton again. He's like the super rich guy in the movie
doing America
Contact
over there. Yeah.
Who like funds everything and is like, oh man, he's like, there's a guru thing going on with him, and he's like every time. This is the fourth time. This time somebody else is saying it, but where it's like exactly on the nose. Yeah, of course. This goes back to my reading of the Federalist Papers. We aren't that people anymore. It's a museum. We are just like anytime we talk about the Constitution, we're not even referencing anything that is even like remotely applicable anymore in a way that makes us walk and talk a life that is supposed to be lived every day, not just on July 4th when there's a parade. Of course he's right.
What do you think, Karen?
That's the most cash money clip since the last maybe Steve Hilton clip. What is it about that dude with the British accent that I
think it has to do with the fact it's just
the British accent.
A guy named Steve.
Well, there's that. But no, of course that's right. I mean, this is trading your birthright because of some thing that you're just really, really whipped up into a lather about, a virus. We've had viruses for thousands of years. We will have them until Jesus comes back. And yet we seemingly are willing to trade what we have and what we take for granted in America for Netflix and chill. Yeah, that's about the most succinct summation of the problem that's just been again demonstrated to us with the American people for the last 3 months. Well done, Arroyo.
Do you think what we've discovered is just how many Americans live a life that requires independence? Meaning, aren't subsidized, own a business, the paycheck to paycheck, and that ultimately what we learned here is how many Americans really are subsidies, and their creature comforts are largely sedentary. You know, the whole Netflix and chill thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That the reason why churches have been slow to reopen and rebel against this, when for centuries they were amongst the first institutions to rebel against attempts like this,
right,
is because without having people show up, I don't have to put up with the hassles that go along with that. And if you're giving, then I don't have a right. If giving is still up there, I mean, let me put it this way: if giving collapsed, if giving was tied to physically being in the church building, would the churches be open right now?
Oh yeah,
everywhere in America, I promise you they would be. Right? Know what I'm trying to say here? That may be what you're realizing. It was something I saw. Somebody, I can't remember her name, who is like the national co-chair for Women for Trump, went after Meghan McCain, who was trashing the people in the Missouri Ozark beaches and stuff over the weekend, and she said to her, I don't know, maybe those are people that can't make millions of dollars talking to dimwits on a Zoom call or on Skype like you can. Try having a little empathy for people whose livelihoods were threatened, and this is the first weekend they were able to get out and be Americans again, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That really what we're seeing is just how many Americans, it's not even the conditioning, but it's just most of their lives are a subsidy and or could be done at home anyway. And so they just weren't threatened by this on a certain level.
Oh, I'm certain of that. But we've seen that with conservative blue check Twitter. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's obnoxious. It's toxic. We're even more certain. We didn't need coronavirus to know that we really don't have a conservative movement anymore. We definitely don't have one now. There's that. I mean, that's a civil war on top of a civil war.
Aaron, what are your thoughts on that?
I was
because that's especially your generation, right?
I kind of tuned out there for a little bit, and then I realized what you were saying, and that's kind of blowing my mind. That succinctly, if I can maybe sum up what you just said succinctly, what we just witnessed over the last couple of months is not because people felt threatened, it's because they did not.
They did not. Yes.
That is
most of my life is online or at home. Most of my life is I just work in between binge watching shows. And you know what? And if I don't have to go out to eat, then all the pressure of what to wear and everything else, you're just going to bring it right to me. My job and there's plenty of private sector jobs, by the way, that you can work from home. And if you can, then maybe you don't ever have to leave your family, whether there's a virus going on or not, right? But that's a separate conversation. But the amount of Americans that are subsidized, right now we have a majority of Americans right now do not work. We have the lowest percentage of people employed in the private sector in American history. Which means that we have the largest amount of jobs that are subsidies, even if they're like cops and soldiers that we need, but those are subsidies. That's why you want limited government, because everything the government funds is a subsidy, right? We have the lowest percentage of people employed in the private sector ever. Almost all the jobs, these 40 million that have been lost, almost all of them have been in the private sector, not in the public sector. And since the majority of Americans aren't working in the private sector, the majority of Americans are subsidized on some level. And you look at the increase in sedentary lifestyles, it didn't threaten us as much as we thought.
You just described the movie WALL-E.
Yeah.
Or at least the proto version of that, how you get to something like that eventually, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we'll come back. A 4-year-old video that went viral again over the weekend because it is turned out to be American prophecy. We'll talk about it for Pop Culture Tuesday next. Stay tuned. So here's something you may not know about your dog's food, that dry kibble stuff. There's nothing alive in it. And food like that has to have a long shelf life. So they've taken, just like they do with our food. This is why we're taking so many supplements today. Same thing is true of our pets. All those live cultures, enzymes, probiotics, prebiotics, all gone so that the food will stay fresh longer for the long shelf life and wider distribution. And that's where Rough Greens VitaSmart comes in, because just like we need supplements, so do our dogs. Now it's not a dog food, but it is a premium dog food supplement. It's a powder that you sprinkle on your pet's food, and it contains massive amounts of vitamins, minerals, digestive enzymes, probiotics, even omega oils and antioxidants that support a healthy skin and coat, improve digestion, give your dog that youthful energy and better mobility as well. And apparently it tastes great. I don't know that for a fact, but our dog Cap absolutely loves it. So if you want to take the Rough Greens 14-day Jumpstart Challenge for your pet, it's just $14.95 to give it a shot and see the difference in your dog. If you want to see your dog thrive again, go to roughgreens.com/blaze. That's Rough Greens, RUFF, roughgreens.com/blaze. That's roughgreens.com/blaze. We're going to show you a video. And if you're listening on Blaze Radio or podcast, there's some sound, but that's why you need to subscribe to Blaze TV. Because you need to see this video to truly understand what is occurring here. This video went viral 4 years ago. Barstool Sports shared it again over the weekend. And I've watched it a few times. I don't believe, because it's Barstool, I don't believe there's any not safe for work language or anything, right? I
screened it again before we went on. So,
all right, this video, folks, I can see why Barstool put it back out again. Because this there's a lot happening here. And even though this event occurred 4 years ago, what's happening here is happening here, if you know what I'm saying. What you're about to watch is American prophecy. Watch this.
I do understand. We've come a long way to get this. We're right here.
I'm sorry, you're not allowed to.
We're right here. This build-up.
Cody, will you come on out? There's a whole film crew that will not leave the 20.
But we only.
No,
you don't understand.
Legal ramifications.
No, there's no legal ramifications because we're gonna. There's one more try and then we're out.
All right, well, you can prove it. Well, I'm about to go do it right there.
We can call the sheriff.
The police can be right there coming. I'm about to go right there. Do you want to get hit or not? You can call the police.
Bodie, they're being quite belligerent.
No, you're using crazy words. We're not. He's gonna go next. He's gonna go next to it.
Right there.
He came all the way from Louisiana to do this.
Sorry, we have folks come from all over.
Yes, and
there's a huge
If you didn't roll down here right this second, we'd be done and out of here, and you wouldn't even know
Let me get one more try, and I'm going.
We're leaving. After this try, we're leaving.
No, I haven't.
I can see blood on your arm.
But nobody's. That's why it's worth it. That's why it's worth so much to us.
Copy, Jeff. Will you call the sheriff, please? There's someone here threatening to move our vehicles, and they've got a whole film crew set. Get off my cart! Get off my cart! Call the sheriff, please! This person's being belligerent.
Not belligerent.
Call the sheriff.
Help me move this bitch. Help me move
Call
this bitch.
the sheriff, please.
Just go for it. Right next to it. You got this. She's just gonna move it back in front of it or whatever.
Come on, Grant, stay in the way. Grant, stay in the way. Savage, bro. I'm going to the side of it.
Go. Go to the side of it.
I need the sheriff, please.
Go to the side of it.
You have a phone. Call 911 yourself.
Get out of here. Please call the sheriff and get somebody out to the 20 right now. Get out.
Right here.
Right here. You want to stand back. You're going to want to stand back. You're going to want to stand back. You're going to want to stand back. He's pedaling. He's pedaling.
Yeah, they're actually being belligerent.
That video. I don't know. I don't have a clue. First of all, props to both sides. That might be the most long-term contentious exchange caught on video in recent American history that didn't have at least 7 F-bombs, right? I mean, when was the last time we even nagged each other like that? That aside, that video, why is it in Pop Culture Tuesday? Because what is Pop Culture Tuesday? The intersection of pop culture and conservatism. If you look at what's in that video, it's exactly what is transpiring in this country right now. Right now. On one side, now I don't know who these young men are. I don't know what their belief system is. I don't have a clue. Okay? And in some ways, I think that almost makes it better. Because what they're embodying is this spirit of adventure, desire for achievement that their creator put inside of them.
Whether they understand
that, you know, could quantify it. I think that's like the third time I've said that word today, by the way. Weird. It's irrelevant. They can't. We've talked before in this segment, noting how often left-wing movie studios are using our themes to tell their best stories, and we've often asked why, and I think ultimately the best answer we came up with is they can't run from the ultimate truths of the universe, right? They can't run from the deep magic, right? Yeah. You can't escape it. We can come up with all kinds of big words and government programs and postmodern imaginings, but ultimately we can't escape the code written into the cosmos. We can't get away from it. We aren't its authors. God is. We can't avoid it. And they're embodying that kind of masculine, uniquely masculine drive. That's what fulfills a manifest destiny. That's what says, hey, let's jump on this rickety boat and risk our lives to go to this new world. That's what, after slamming down a few pints, says, hey, screw King George. Enough of this. Screw that noise. We're not doing this anymore. That's where it comes from. And even people who are imperfect and systemically flawed, when they latch on to that God-given instinct, can build a great country collectively over the course of generations. That's what's taking place on one side of that equation. On the other side of that equation is all spirit of this age. I'm calling the sheriff, in other words, government. Call the government. The government must stop this. Someone is doing something that could not be safe. Government must stop it. the proto-Karen at the bottom of those stairs, who then attempts to move her cart as if it's a wheeled mask, to move her cart to a place where the contagion of their desire for achievement and spirit of adventure could be thwarted from spreading. And yet in the end, nature finds a way anyway. Now, that spirit of the age, though, is what's tearing the country down. The idea that everything has to be safe or could even be made so. As if that's even possible. No, that doesn't mean, hey, we're not handing driver's licenses out to 9-year-olds. Okay, don't give me a false choice. That doesn't mean there's no place for prudence, man. But in the end, what those young men wanted to do is extraordinarily reckless. So were Lewis and Clark. That was pretty reckless. That's pretty reckless. The Mayflower was pretty reckless. It was pretty reckless. History shows erring on the side of reckless more often than prudence is what gets stuff done. Now, that's not an absolute. We don't always err on the side of reckless. You know, we were talking during the break about our governor here is going to loosen more standards up at the end of the week, right?
Yes.
And even I mean, dude, I've been the flippin' Paul Revere of coronavirus pushback and scrutiny, right?
Yes.
Even you heard me say during the last break when you and I were talking about it, I don't know that I'd reopen the casinos if I were governor. Now, if everything outdoors would all be open at 100%. And if anything, I'd be moving indoor stuff outdoors to get people out there. But hey, who typically congregates indoors at our casinos? Who's typically there all day long? A
fair number of elderly.
The people in the same age group.
Wheeling their oxygen tanks around to play the slots.
I'd be a little concerned about that. So that doesn't mean there's never a place for prudence. But prudence in and of itself can't be a state of being. Prudence can only be a check on making sure we're not too reckless. What's happening with this spirit of the age, this idea that we can have perfect outcomes to solutions. We talked about this with the virus from the very beginning. The idea that we could escape our mortality. No, we can't. And there aren't any perfect solutions. We're east of Eden here. Sometimes bad marriages break up. Sometimes good marriages that you thought there's no way that has any shot stay together. Sometimes smart kids flunk tests. And sometimes dumb kids walk in after loafing their entire scholastic career and get a 36 on the ACT. I mean, that's the reality of the world in which we live. That's what a fallen world does. So there's a place for prudence, but it cannot be given preeminence. And at the heart of progressivism is the idea that prudence, as defined by the people like them, they get to define what is prudent and what is not. They get to. It's their definition. And it is then therefore prudent to allow them to impose that on everybody else. You don't settle the frontier that way. You don't beat the Nazis and Japs that way. You beat the Nazis and Japs. Nimitz decides to listen to one code breaker against the entire Pentagon. Takes a chance. Reckless. Takes a chance. Ends up being the battle that turned the entire Pacific Theater. Took a chance. And there can be no chance taking. And at the heart of why there's no chance taking is because progressives, for all their talk that they believe human nature is basically good, really only believe that their basic nature is good. That they have a knowledge you don't have. They have an expertise you don't have. And so they can be like God, and you can be like their subjects if you know what's best for you. What do you guys think of that video?
Well, the audio is incredibly important. It's a mini civics debate. She's sitting there caroning about the liability, and says something about blood. And he's like, but that's why we do it. You don't, it's not your job. We don't hold anybody liable for this. We're not here to blame or indict anybody by our actions. We're just here to live. Now, there's this, and this is important because there's a lot of conservative Christians out there who their sense of self-righteousness is very much in line with her and not those guys. They believe it's their job to drive in the left lane at the exact speed limit and make sure nobody's going any faster. Well, if it's they wouldn't get in any trouble if they would just follow the law. I mean, they are Barney Fifes to their end. They would arrest people without batting an eye, for jaywalking on a regular basis. If these guys had been reckless in that there were all kinds of people around there, and they were doing that. If it was putting anybody else at danger, we'd have a different conversation. That was a ghost town. I don't know when it was, where it was. I also love the fact that they said we drove from Louisiana. I mean, the sense of purpose. These aren't just slack-jawed ne'er-do-wells. At least in this moment, this was their Mount Everest. They were going to the moon. We had a sense of purpose. Dear God, go to your average public high school these days. You'd kill for that sense of purpose from a lot of people. It's tackle football. Fine. This is their tackle football as well. That's not everybody's taste. This is their rite of passage. I swear, Steve and I know this, and it was allowed. It wasn't probably, even if Aaron was going to public school, it wasn't allowed. And I think you referenced this, and we're not allowed to say it but when we went out for recess in grade school, in middle school, we played a version of a football game that you just could not wait. You were sitting in your rows, you were learning, you understood it was important, but you had to go out and you had to prove yourself in that crucible. And this is me talking, I was always one of the smallest kids, but I felt like, nope, you're never ever, you're never going to lay down. You're going to hit as hard as you get hit. It's that important. If you don't understand that about young men, whether you're a mom or a dad wearing your skinny jeans, you understand nothing. This should be required viewing for Americanism 101.
All of this on the other side of the divide. Of the bikers, of the trick bikers in that video, the Karening, if you will. All of it is done in the name of safety. All of the virtue signaling, all of that. It's always rooted somehow, some way. Well, it's just not safe. It's not safe. Your car, you're safer when your car is in your garage, when you're sitting in your car in your garage. That's not what your car is made for, though. It's safer when, let's say you have a boat that's sitting in the marina. You're safer then, but that's not what the boat is made for. You're safer when you're sitting in your basement all of the time, never leaving, never going outside. You're safer, maybe, there, aside from the fact that your immune system, you're killing your body, it's going to trash. You're safer there physically, from the most part, than you are outside. But that's not what you're made for. It's not what you're made for. And at the end of the day, it is the contradiction. It is the antipathy of what we were made for. To say, you can't do this, you should not do this, you should not do that, you cannot do that because it's not safe. That is the antithesis of how we were made. We were made, especially men, we were made to take risks. We were made to do something more than just sit and twiddle our thumbs and Netflix and chill.
The spirit of those men we commemorate on Memorial Day. Where does that spirit come from to storm Normandy, Iwo Jima? It's in those boys with those bikes. That's where it comes from. John 3:17.